Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Bread for Soul Convos. And I'm starting with a smile, but today we are discussing a rather serious issue within the music industry and dealing with copyright. The man you just seeing on your screen there is the COO of CAPASSO, Mr. Wiseman Ngubo. Thank you, firstly, for joining me on the show, brother. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Sir LSG. Thanks for having me, man. It's a great platform that you've built here. We've seen the following, and thanks for having us, man.
Man, I've been really trying to see how to do this best. Initially my thinking was that I would have all the top three royalty collection societies. Sampra,
Mm.
Capasso, and Samro, all in one show. But I've realized, you and I were talking about this when it comes to the rather serious topics. There isn't a lot of people tuning in to view because it's
Yeah.
not that glamorous, but it's still
Mm.
necessary, I believe. So I decided to kind of split it into three different shows and stretch it out so people can get
Yeah.
into a single royalty collection society at a time and then get onto the others one day, get
Mm.
a hang of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think firstly, let's start with the work that you do at Capasso. What
Mm.
what exactly does Capasso do?
All right, man. So, as you've alluded to already, CAPASSO is a collecting society, but collecting societies each work with a specific mandate and a specific right. So, CAPASSO does what is called the reproduction right, which is the mechanical right, really. So, whenever you see these being reproduced, or whenever you're duplicating copies of the CD, whenever you're duplicating copies of the song you've written. So, we work. There's also a misunderstanding of who and how CMOs work generally. So, as Capasso, we work primarily with songwriters. That is separate from CMOs that we work with performers like your Sampras and your Impras. We are working with performing musicians. We work with the songwriters or the musicians who actually write what we term the original copyright in the music. So the person who came in, there was no song, they thought of the song, and they brought the song to life in one way or the other,
Yeah.
either through composing it or writing the lyrics to it or creating the melody and programming it into the Cubase or the Fruity Loops. Those are the people we work with.
Yes.
And what we do for those people is we essentially license anytime that song is being reproduced or copied in any format. We play a role. A big chunk of what we do really is in the digital space. So whenever there's a service that is looking to launch in this country, like you look at services like your Apple Music, your YouTube Music, your Stimfies, your Spotify's, those organizations license with us so that by the time they avail the music on their platforms, at the very least, the songwriters are now covered. So we license usage on those platforms on behalf of songwriters, and we do this continentally. So from literally from Cape to Cairo. And continentally, we do it in tandem with our counterparts on the continent, but we license the usage and the reproduction of music on these platforms across the continent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if you could hold the phone, maybe rather on your right hand, because the camera is right on your left and your thumb is showing a bit there.
Oh,
But
okay. Sorry.
I
Yeah.
think it's so important also to distinguish, so that people really understand. If I could make it clearer and yeah, you'll correct me if my understanding, because sometimes we think we know these things and then boom, and so in a music, a piece of music. So let's say there's a song. This song has a singer in it, or let me say, yeah, it has a singer. So the singer would be singing something that was written, lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
in that sense. But they are also singing on top of some music, a recorded music.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, let's say, for argument's sake, there's a piano and a vocal or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
the singer is singing lyrics on top of this piano song. The piano itself, the music played within the piano is a composition by someone else. So So now there's two rights that arise from there, just thinking about the lyrics and the composition. So somebody who either wrote the piano lines or actually thought about the chord progressions, played the piano lines, that person is a composer. Whoever wrote the lyrics would be the writer, the songwriter, So I just wanna, if I could hold on there, you'll correct me again if I'm wrong. So you would then represent somebody who wrote the piano lines or composed the song, and also you would also represent somebody who wrote the lyrics to that song.
Yeah. So yeah, correct. So legally we'd call that the musical work.
Yes.
So we represent people who create the music, the authors of the musical work. I use the term songwriter as an umbrella term in order to encompass both what we will call the composers and the lyricists. So all those as authors of the musical work, I then use the term songwriter to just encompass all of them, so as to make it easier for any. But in essence, it's I always use this example to illustrate where that comes from, because the songwriting is actually the oldest form of trade in music besides singing. Before people could record music, what they would do is annotate music, which is write it in sheet music, where you have you could literally write it in a piece of paper, and the composition and the arrangement, everything is in there in the form of a musical note, a musical annotation, with the lyrics on top of it, telling you how to sing it. Back in the day when we were in primary, you'd be taught how to sing by hitting all the different notes, saying do re mi fa sol la ti do. That in itself, that key and that chord progression, you can find it in an annotation as you are hitting each of those notes. So that was the original trade in music, really. Before then, people would just sing, and then people reduce those songs into a tangible format in the form of an annotation, which was then sold. You then sell that annotation, and then you will find talented people coming, reading that sheet music and knowing exactly what to perform and how to perform that song. They know at this point, this is the bridge. At this point, I need to go high because this is an F sharp, or I need to go low because this is a low note, whatever. And this is how I need to space out the lyrics, because as this is in the annotation, it would tell you exactly how to space out the lyrics, in what where to hold your breath and all that type of stuff. So in essence, nowadays what we do is we do that in one fell swoop as we create the music. We're no longer going to create a separate sheet music. What you do is you are creating the music as you record the music.
Yes.
So in essence, you make the music tangible as you create a recording.
Yes.
So you most times, as you are sitting on the FL Studio creating a beat, or on the FL Studio, in essence, as the beat is being, as you are creating music, you are actually annotating the music, but in just digital format.
Yes.
And as you go into the booth, most of the time, some rappers nowadays don't even write the music. They go into the booth and they rap as they go along, as they think they rap, and they fix the song as they go along, and it's up to the engineer to put the verses together and eventually have a full-on song. All it's changed really is the mechanism of fixing. It hasn't, but it doesn't stop the fact that in that recorded song, there's an underlying piece of music in there that can be separated into rhythm, it can be separated into lyrics, can be separated into melody, can be separated into structure. And what we then represent as CAPASSO are all those different elements outside of the recorded song.
No, I get it, and I hope people get it, to people who are watching. I think there are two important things before we carry on to note. Firstly, I am glad that you are not a singer, You've given us an example, and I think we all agree it's good enough that we are glad that you do the work that you do at CAPASSO. But
No, man, I realized very early on in my life that the talent might not, the heart might want,
yes.
but the skill set isn't there. So I needed to find another way to to play a role.
Yeah, no, we are glad for your role, definitely. But also, now I want to get into um, when you represent as CAPASSO. So at Samro, I would go and register as a performer, and I can go and register as an individual. So does CAPASSO then represent the songwriters as individuals, or is it rather the publishers of the music?
Okay. So the simple answer to that is both. So we represent both songwriters and publishers. If a songwriter doesn't have direct publisher representation, then we represent that songwriter by themselves. If they've chosen a publisher and they've chosen to get themselves represented by a publisher, then that publisher is also can also be a member. But in the same way, if you are published and you still want to be a member, you can still be, because then it allows you, it avails the information that you would have in relation to those songs that your publisher is publishing to you through the official structures of the organization. So we encourage all individual songwriters to join, as well as their chosen publishers.
No, it makes sense. And so initially, when it did make sense to me, while I was studying in 2008, the CD market was still quite existent in South Africa. It's still there, but it's very small at the moment, and a few stores that used to sell CDs are closing down or have already closed down. And I understood the role of mechanical royalties being a reproduction, but mainly looking at CDs or other forms where the music can be physically reproduced, mechanically, if I may put it that way. So now in the digital space, how and where does the money actually, even with the, if you could explain, just moving from CD, because there are still some people who print CDs now, where does the money come from? If I release a CD through a label once, because the way I understand it is that immediately as a CD is printed, is produced, one CD is produced, there is some money that should be coming to me as a songwriter or as a publisher. Who's paying that money, and where does it come from before the CD is even sold?
Okay, sure. So we'll jump over the vinyl and the cassette space and go straight to the CDs, because the principle is still the same. So whenever labels, so this is now a record label. So if you're a songwriter, or if you play in what we call the music publishing space, record label, the recording industry, or the recorded music industry, is a client of yours, in the sense that in the recorded industry makes use of songs that you've written, or songs that your chosen publisher publishes as a creator, and they then make those songs into recorded music and sell that recorded music. One of the ways in which they sell that recorded music to the public is by creating CDs. So every time a record label is making a CD, there's a royalty that is due to the people who created, who wrote on each and every one of those songs. So how that comes about is, generally, it's slightly changed now with consignment, but generally how it came about in the traditional sense was that the label will sell a CD, will go and manufacture a CD, cost them about $14 to make the CD. Then they'd be able to then sell that CD for about 30 to 50 rands. And when they were selling that CD, they were selling that CD to a musiker, to a CD warehouse, a reliable, all these what you call storefronts, who will then sell it to you and me as the public for another markup of about 100 Rand, 120. So the actual business, the music element of the business, ended at that $50. when they were selling it to the dealer, who would then on remit and sell it to you and I. And they had their distribution channels. Like, for instance, if we're looking at the only surviving one now, Musica, they have distribution channels all across the country because they're a chain. So they are able to then get your CD throughout the 9 provinces, so that your fans can actually access the music in a place close to their homes. So whenever they made a copy of that CD, a royalty was due. Now, there were different ways in which we structured this because the industry had its own mechanisms to make them work, right? One of which was things like what we would call the PPD, right? So whenever you hear them speak, they'll say, okay, what is the PPD? The PPD really is the definition is the published price per dealer. So, i.e., the amount of money the record label sells the CD to a musica for. That's where your royalty base is.
So that's the 50 rands.
Yeah, your 50 rands, your $30 if your CD is not that popular, but that's the amount of money that comes into the coffers of the label. And that's where you then levy the songwriter's fee, which at the moment is around 6.76% of that price. That money is then shared amongst however many songwriters are. So let's make a very clear example. If you have a 10-track album that you are selling for $50, let's say you sell it for $50 and you sell 10,000 copies of that. $50, divide that by 6.76%. I think it comes up to about 8 rands or 7 rands, something there per CD. Times that by 7,000, then let's say it's about 70,000 rands, right? Then or let's say, and in each of those 10 songs, each song will be about 7,000 rands because there's 10 songs. So each song will have its own share of that 10. So you'll divide that 70,000 rand into the 10 songs. So each song will be about 7,000 rands. And then you then have the number of writers in each of those songs. So let's just say each song, maybe it was a collab album with just 2 songwriters, the lyricist and the guy who made the composition. So each of them will then be getting, supposing they have equal splits, each of them will then be getting 3 rand,
3,500.
3,500 per song.
Yes.
But obviously, most songs are written by a number of people in collaboration, and it's never really the same songwriters. Most of the time, the only common songwriter is if you have a songwriter who also happens to be the featured performer of that album, who will then feature across all the songs. In most cases, it will be different people. And by rule of thumb, I think internationally, the top, is it 20 Billboard songs have on average 6 songwriters. So in essence, you'd be splitting that 7,000 rands amongst those 6 songwriters for an album that is an album at 10,000 is what? Gold or platinum now? It's gold.
It's gold.
So gold. So an album that's gold would entitle each of those songwriters. If you're dividing 7,000 rand by 6, you're getting about 1,250 there. Odd. Though my arithmetic is not the greatest, so, but the point is to illustrate, not necessarily to get the correct maths.
Yeah.
So you'll be getting around 1,000 whatever per song that you've written or per song that you've placed. So the biggest job really of also a publisher is to place your songs in CDs that are in the hands of a performing artist who's likely to sell a lot of CDs. So you write songs as a songwriter, you give them to your publisher, whose job is to pitch it to the recording industry and say, I know LSG has created this song, it would go really well on Beyonce's album. Because Beyonce will then sell a lot of CDs and a lot of songs, and if you've placed on that CD, the likelihood of you making money is higher.
Yeah. No.
So that's the business in a nutshell. Then you fast forward to a streaming to the streaming market now, with physical dying out, we now rely more on streaming markets. So how we license streaming platforms really is we license them in twofold. We license every time you and I access a platform like Apple Music, we pay a fee. So you would pay for an individual subscription 59 rands, and family subscription 89 rands. Student, I think it's about $30. So that price that you pay is then split amongst the entire suppose value chain, because it includes Apple Music in there itself. So we would charge a percentage of that amount for the songwriters. And the rest will then be split between the platform itself and then the recorded industry at some point. So it's different payment mechanisms. But the songwriters will then charge a percentage of the subscription that you and I pay, and a portion of it will go to the songwriter via an organization like CAPASSO. The second man of licensing is if you and I are accessing it for free. Then what happens is the platform then will sell advertising. That's why you see a lot of adverts if you accessing for free. And then we charge, or we levy a percentage of that advertising income. And this is where it's also crucial if you are looking to support the industry, that we pay to access music, because the money has to come from somewhere. If there's no money, like the advertising money will always be way less. In fact, in most instances, even in the big advertising platforms like your YouTube platforms like YouTube, etc., the payment is usually less. Like the payment for that the industry would get from an advertising model versus a subscription model would be 1:20. Wow. So the disparity is huge. Just paying that $60 makes so much of a difference in ensuring that the songwriters and in essence every other person who is in the value chain gets compensated for your accessing the music in a fair or at least a more favorable way.
Yeah. And things have gotten really tough, for musicians. If you think about the 6.67% kind of was kind of low already, now you get to deal with very small amounts of percentages. I'm just trying to think now, if somebody's paying $60 to Apple Music and then they play 100,000 songs, like the amount of money divided between everybody who that person accessed, everybody's music which the user accessed throughout the month. Once you divide that, it becomes even smaller. So I do want to know about what are some of the figures though that you would see from streaming for an artist, just on average, if you were to take one of the biggest performing artists in South Africa?
So this is always a very tricky question, because obviously there are times there's considerations of not trying to put people's business out there.
Yeah.
But with that said, streaming is a very weird thing, right? And I'll answer it almost parably. So the first part is, back in the day, you could place on a Beyonce album, place track 8, that will never have a video, will never be a single. But the album sells 1 million copies. You will earn off that 1 million copies on the strength, maybe sometimes, of that one single that was carrying the album, that everybody then went and bought the album for. So in essence, you will be splitting the money amongst. So you relied on prolific songwriters. You could be, in essence, a hit song was compensated almost the same way as a fan fave song.
Yeah.
Decoupling of the album with the digital space means now you can no longer afford to write just a fan fave song. You now need to write a hit song. hence more collaboration, and hence the dilution of some of the. And back in the day, it wasn't far-fetched to hear a song being co-authored by just two people. It was just a normal thing. In some cases, you'd even find a single author for a song. Nowadays, as I said, on average, it's 6 for a hit. If you want a hit, you'll have 6 songwriters in there, and that's how you create a hit. But then you still find that in other spaces, you're getting paid, and also the mechanics of how the streaming platform also works also affects how the payment works, right? In the sense that it's a macro element. So you must write a hit song. And your song, and the ability for you to earn comes from your song being consumed regularly at all times by your fans. So you need to constantly be engaging the fans so that the fans can interact with the song multiple times, right? Then you then get the idea of how, once the public has interacted, the crucial element is that it needs to be a paying public, because the money that you'd get from a freemium stream versus a subscription stream is completely like night and day. As I said, like sometimes it's 1:20. So the crucial element, what you're trying to target, is that the people consuming your music the most are the people who've paid that $60. But also crucially, it's the 60, all the $60 that will be paid by everyone across the country will be pulled into one common pot at the end of the month of the reporting period. And that common pot, so for instance, if there's 100,000 subscribers for any one service, each paying 60,000 rands to access the platform, in essence, the amount of money that would be available at the end of the month for distribution to the industry for consumption on that platform would be 60 rands times 100,000, which is about what, 6 million, 6 million rands, something like that. Yeah. So that 6 million rands will then be given up amongst the different entities in accordance with their shares. And that share can range from anything, internationally, can range from anything between 10 to 15% for the songwriters, and anything between around 35 to about 45% for the recorded industry, and the platform itself takes about 40% of that, 30% of that. So that variance, then you then get a pool. So if we stick to the 6 million rand, and let's, for ease of calculation, let's stick with the 10% for songwriters. That would mean there'd be 600,000 available for songwriters in that platform for that month. So there would be 600,000 available for distribution. Now, generally, people spend about roughly 3 hours or so a day on the platform. And if you think the average song, it's changing now, but generally the average song was around 3.5 minutes. It's getting lower and lower now in the digital space, but average song is about 3.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes divided by 60 is what? Yeah, no, my maths. It's less than 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so less than 10, let's say 8 for sake of calculation. Let's say 8, and then that would be you streaming about 8, 16, 24 songs a day. Or streaming one song 24 times.
Yeah.
Because it can vary like that, right?
Yeah.
So then 24 songs a day, 24 songs times 7, and then 24 times 21 maybe. For 21 days, actually, or maybe 30 days. So you'll stream those 24 songs for 30 days. That's just you alone. Now, if you times that by the 100,000 subscribers that are there, that means it's 2,400 songs a day. Times that by 30. But even this assumes there's a lot of assumptions I'm making in this illustration, in the sense that the consumption habits are the same for all of these people, but these are
Yeah.
all averages.
Yes, yes.
And some people might not stream a single song that month, or might stream just one
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
So obviously the purpose is just to illustrate how the macro element works, because the behavioral patterns are completely different and erratic.
Yeah.
There's services for me that I haven't touched in over 2 weeks,
Yeah.
because I'm using that one specific one this week that I like.
Yeah.
And then I might go for the others the other weeks. But in essence, 2,400 songs a week. Is it 2,400 or 24,000? 100,000 times 24 is, yeah,
Yeah.
24,000. Yeah, it's 24,000. Let's stick to 24,000 for our sake, right?
Yeah. No.
24,000 times 10 is 2.4, times another 10, 2.4, 2.4, 2.4, that's 7.2 million. So there'd be 7.2 million streams from that service, if or 7.2 million songs streamed.
Yes.
If we're calculating just the songs
Yeah.
at the end of that month.
Yeah.
So so then the idea would be to then say, okay, how much data each of those songs have generated. So basically, a stream is calculated as any song that you stream for longer than 30 seconds is one stream. If you stream for 29 seconds, it's usually seen as a preview, which attracts no royalty. So anytime you stream a song for longer than 30 seconds, then it counts as one stream. So 7.2 million streams divided into 600,000
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the answer to that, but yeah.
is then going to get you down to a per stream rate. And then you then go back and you say, what songs were now streamed? Because the viral songs will be streamed the most, which means
Yes.
the viral songs will get a bigger market share of that 600,000. Then, so if all of us sit there and we stream Master KG,
Yeah.
for that, like if Master KG, of those 7.2 million streams, if Master KG is responsible for 3.2 million of those, then Master KG gets half of that 600,000.
Yes, yes.
Because his song is the song that was consumed the most holistically at the end of the month. They had a higher market share. So those are the macroeconomics of the streaming market in essence.
And yeah, man, and I'm sure a person like Master KG is really killing it then during these times, because his song is being streamed all over the world. You know, like it's such an amazing thing to see. I want to ask you about live streams, ne, because
Sure.
artists have gotten to a point, COVID-19 lockdown, and now there's no more gigs. You know, we don't know until when, and we see a lot of artists trying to do the online thing, really taking the performance online. But the issue that most DJs face is that most DJs anyway were playing other people's songs. You know, like we're not. You know, if I'm a producer, but I don't even play. I can't have 2 hours of my all the
there's no
time.
way. There's only a certain number of Sir LSG remixes you can have,
Yeah,
or
ne,
versions, anyways.
yeah,
After
yeah.
a while, you then need to play other people's songs.
Exactly. So now there is a challenge that um, it seems like the digital space hasn't really caught up with, or let me say, the music industry has not caught up with the digital space with regards to what do we then do in this situation, you know, like where social media is there and it's the biggest platform for everyone, but now you can't really play other people's music without consent. You know, like the stream will naturally just cut you. Facebook would do the same, especially if it's a song that's quite popular. If it's on a major label, the song will be muted within your stream, or just the stream will just stop, you know. So I want to understand, is there a way of generating income for, firstly, for the artists, the songwriters within that context, um, and also is there a way that DJs can then somehow pay for some license for usage of music, especially in a sense where the music is not being sold. You know, the DJs are not selling advertising. No one is actually making money from live streaming. They just want to get more eyes onto what they do and promote themselves like that. So, what are some of the things that we could do in that sense?
Yeah. So first, let's start with the not making money. They are making money in a good way. The more, as a DJ, the more you stay in people's heads and top of mind, the quicker you're probably gonna get booked and the higher your booking fee will be. So you might not be making money on the live stream, but you're benefiting from the use of the music in the sense that you are building a goodwill and a
Yes.
good name for yourself. You are trading on your goodwill.
Eh,
So that in itself is a very crucial distinction. But just to answer the question directly, there's one thing that we've realized with the COVID pandemic and the way in which DJs want to use music on the platforms, right? It's the lack of understanding of the intricacies of licensing. There's mechanisms to make sure that those things don't happen, but the mechanisms sometimes are too cumbersome because, as you are saying, a lot of the times you're sitting at home, you get an inspiration, like, I'm free, let me connect to my Serato and do my thing. Like, you're sitting there playing around on tractor, you're like, actually, let me just make this a live stream. And so when that happens, you are doing it almost as a spur of the moment thing. Whereas the licensing mechanisms required for it get very, very complex. So the first part is you need to license that usage. So you need to license that usage from a songwriter perspective, i.e. contact somewhere in CAPASSO and get the live stream license from us for you to be able to exploit the songwriter's thing. But once you've obtained that, that's not the end all be all. You still need to then license the recorded music you'll be using, because every song has at least two copyrights. You have the musical work and you have the recorded song. So once you've licensed this one, you then need to license. It's easier to license the songwriting element because you can get that collectively from us as CAPASSO. We can issue that license. Then you flip into the recorded space where the recorded music you are using is owned by multiple different recording companies. And this is where most of the parameters for blocking are set, actually. They set by using what you call the fingerprinting technology, which basically takes a recording and fingerprints it and then sets the parameters of how people are supposed to be using that particular thing. So the recorded music owners or the labels will then say, Facebook, if anybody is using this song that is not us, block it. In order for you to be able to then use it, you then need to go to that label and say, I'll be using these songs in the set list. I need to clear these songs. I'm doing a live stream on this date. I need to clear these songs, and you speak to each of them, and then you clear it. In theory, you should be able to clear all those songs. In most times, you might find that labels, because unlike the collective management agencies, some labels have varying capacities and capabilities. Some labels are one-man bands who've never licensed a song before. Others are big conglomerates who have entire licensing departments dedicated to monetizing their recorded works. So, and that comes with its own admin complication in speaking to all of these guys to get the ability to be able to stream these songs for free. And then the flip side is also complicated by the fact that there are certain licenses that exist with these platforms. A Facebook would get into a licensing agreement with the music industry to allow certain usages of music to be availed on their platform. Like if you've ever seen things like if you log on to Instagram and you can now search a song, you can see lyrics. All of those are licensed usages. on the gram that Facebook would have entered into an arrangement with the recorded industry as well as the publishing industry through the CMOs to ensure that that is taken care of. But it takes care of very specific usages. That's why in some cases you are on Facebook Live and then a song is playing in the background right now as an incidental use. That probably will never get blocked because that convenience Facebook has paid for. But what Facebook hasn't paid for is the commercialization of their platform by a third party. So you come, you say, I'll use the YouTube platform, I'll use the Facebook platform, and I'll either charge a fee to my fans to access the live stream, or I'll get a sponsor to sponsor me to set it up, and then the branding will be all over the place, and then I'll be able to then trade on goodwill. The fans will be able to access for free, but there's a commercial exercise behind it. That's what will then get you blocked, because that's what would require you to go and clear the songs.
And it needs to be done obviously before, right?
Yeah, before.
Yeah.
Not after.
Yeah, not during.
And definitely not during, because you are busy then.
Yeah.
There are times where, and maybe it's better for you guys who are deep house DJs. I used to be a DJ back in my day, and sometimes hip hop DJ, you only have a minute and a half to play a song.
Yeah.
Before you need to change it.
Yeah.
So that thing will run out if you're still trying to figure out if it's muted or not.
Yo, but this thing it's rather quite a tedious exercise if you think about it. I think for me, the way I see things going is that in the future, Facebook will, if probably the conversations have already begun, we just don't know yet, that I think that Facebook would be at a point where it has some kind of a licensing thing, an agreement, a proper agreement where for fair use, for fair usage, where somebody's like, listen, I'm not really generating income, direct income, like I might not even get a booking out of this thing, but what might actually even happen is that you might find that the very same artists benefit from this stream because now more people have been exposed to their music. I think there just needs to be other ways of doing this in a way that we're not expecting to draw blood from a stone, in a sense where an artist is not really making any kind of money. You know what I mean?
Now you're touching on something very important, because there is the crucial cornerstone of these things.
Yeah.
It's not the right.
Before you continue, I want to ask you, do you have a light, because it's getting darker and I see that
it's getting dark. I was
we are
about to
losing
ask
you.
you if it's anything. Okay,
Yeah.
let me do this. Hold on.
Okay. And yeah, guys, I mean, this thing is very tricky, like I think it's important to kind of always be on the lookout. How are other people doing it? Like, there's platforms on Facebook and pages that do online streaming.
Tanga, is it better?
Yeah. Much better. It's perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying, now you're touching on on the very cornerstone of these things, right? Whereas people will get mad at a record label for blocking the usage on a platform. It's not the record label's fault. Because with you live streaming on Facebook, the one person that benefits the most, by person we mean the juristic entity that benefits the most, is Facebook.
Yeah.
So Facebook must pay for that convenience for the users to be able to stream songs on the platform.
Yeah.
Right now they have licenses with the industry, but it's not for that. That's why you find that the live streams are difficult. Well, the easiest solution is Facebook paying the industry what the industry needs to be able to avail that to them without a problem. That is the easiest solution. So the pressure that we should be putting isn't necessarily on the industry, because the industry is ready and willing to license the usage. The platforms are the ones who are not willing to license for that particular usage.
Yeah.
They much rather cherry pick small things that they want, and then that's what they license for. The rest, they don't. That's why you then find that it's because then the industry must then ensure that these blocks happen so that they can see that actually your platform users actually want this service,
Yeah.
but they can't have it. So you must now pay so that they can have it.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes so much sense, because
You
anyway,
see,
I think when more people are on Facebook and a lot of people are on Facebook anyway, there's a lot of live streams happening anyway on Facebook, and I don't know how many more blockings do they need to see that, guys. Let's pay some money, because I believe that once we get to that, then we're gonna get to a point where we are seeing more people staying on Facebook, because
or on the platform, yeah.
live
And it's not
streams will.
just Facebook; it's any digital
Yeah,
platform,
yeah,
really. Because the convenience of keeping your fans engaged in your platform will drive your user base anyways. So you must then, and the only problem has been, and this is an international fight in the sense that platforms have tried to downplay how crucial music is in their audience retention. And because then it then makes licensing cheaper. When they say, no, people don't come to our platform for music, they come for other things. Music is just a thing they do on the side. Okay, then you'll get licensed for the side things. But then you then get your users frustrated when blocking of certain usages that are crucial and pure music elements are happening. This is why you find platforms, other platforms that are purely live stream starting to come up that are trying to cover these gaps, because the existing platforms haven't really put in place the licenses they should be putting in place that will enable the users on each of those individual platforms to make full usage of these things. And to shoot them some bail, though, and no one could have anticipated the pandemic and the proliferation of just because I think the pandemic probably pushed the live stream industry ahead by maybe 5 years, because it was straggling along as a thing that's there, but no one really cares about, unless you are into gaming.
Yeah.
It was really just a gaming thing. But now it's accelerated everything from a music perspective, and people are starting to see it as a viable source. It might not completely replace live, because nothing beats live, really. I think music by its very nature was supposed to be ephemeral, in that you were supposed to experience it in a spiritual moment and have it disappear, and you just live with the memory.
Yeah.
Because nothing beats hearing a live performer perform. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like you can hear a record multiple times, but nothing beats hearing a live performer do it the first. So, anyways, I digress. The idea would then be to get the platforms to say, I know my people want to be able to live stream. Music industry, I want to license for live streams. Anyone who's on my platform will be able to use the live stream for free or on payment of whatever fee, if it's the subscription, whatever it is. The business model they can do. And I think right now there are talks that they are having internally, trying to figure out how best to do that. And this is across all the platforms, really, from Twitch to Facebook, YouTube, and any other platform. Like you can even down to your TikToks. They're looking at ways of trying to figure out how they can actually create a viable live stream platform. Twitch has gone as far as even getting a guy who headed up Spotify for artists to head up Day for Artists platform, because they're trying to build a platform that will attract musicians to Twitch as a live streaming platform, which was initially, prior to the pandemic, was known for just games. Yeah, we wanted to watch people live stream Fortnite one day and you watch it. But now there's what the pandemic has done is two things: accelerated the need for live music, but also showcase the interconnectedness of the gaming industry with the music industry. And then everybody's realizing, okay, no, these two actually have a very good symbiotic relationship that can play off each other. So there's ways to marry the two that they're looking into. So we're probably going to find more of those licenses happening soon. And it's just the platforms just need to be serious about saying, okay, now we are actually doing.
Yeah, and I hope they do quite quick, because I think there's so much opportunity as well. Once that can be sorted, other things can come into play, especially from artist point of view when it comes to advertising, because advertisers as well, they could come through, but if the licensing is not happening, the stream is not happening,
Yeah.
like advertisers are not paying for anything.
Yeah.
I want to ask you just quickly to get into this, not really in a big way, but like there's this copyright amendment bill and the performance protection bill, that the parliament had taken to the president. He was almost at the point of signing it, and then he took it back. He took it back to the
Yeah.
parliament because there were some unconstitutional issues with regards to that.
Mm.
If you were to explain this thing to in very simple terms, what was in what were some of the clauses that were just unfair towards artists and creators within the copyright amendment bill?
Yeah, okay. So I think the long and short of it was the bills were wolf in sheep's skin. The preamble and the intention around it was to create bills that basically protected musicians in the digital space, or creatives in the digital space. But what it actually did is do the opposite. It then allowed for things like uh, unrestricted fair use, or which would then essentially mean that you, as somebody who creates content, would find yourself having to go to court every time somebody uses that content in order to prove that that person is not using that content in a fair manner. Very difficult to do, because now you have to hire lawyers and go to court and prove that. And most of the time, anybody who's infringing, they use that fair use defense as a mechanism to block you. So you had those things. You had far-reaching things where it almost took what is intellectual property and copyright and made it seem like it's less of a property than physical property. Like, for instance, as a car, if you have a car and you fully own it, you can sell it, you can leverage it, you can do whatever you want with the car because it's your property. That's essentially the same thing we want for copyright. A musician should be able to say, I have a song. If I want to sell Lesego my song, I should be able to sell Lesego my song, provided that we are engaging in a very fair deal, because there are other things where the scales are not balanced in a fair manner such that somebody can take advantage. But provided that the playing fields are level and everything is fair, you should be able to leverage your property should you wish, for anything that you want. Because imagine now you have a catalog that's 2 million strong, and somebody wants to buy 250 of that catalog, and you realize you can sell 250 of that catalog and still have 1.7 million, but then leverage the money you get from that for something else that is much bigger. You should be able to do that freely. And those were some of the restrictions in terms of treating copyright as property that were in those bills that were problematic, right? Then you had other things that were just generally against the industry, that favored big platforms. And I always use this example of saying, when you log onto a Zoom like we did now, you enter into a contract via those shrink like contracts where they say, tick here to accept T's and C's. Those are contractual terms that you're entering into that you can't vary. No one can vary those terms. All the creatives who want to put the content on these platforms have to agree to those terms. And then, so the only way to balance the scales is if you protect these creatives through legislation. Make sure that the law requires, your light just went dim there. Make sure that the law requires that the platforms deal with the creatives on a fair manner. Because if you don't, then all you are leaving them to do really is accept those terms, because they have nothing else on the other side to contend with. And those terms could be terrible. for instance, I'll make an example. Over, is it 88% of all videos on YouTube have less than 1,000 views, right? 88% of all videos that are on there have less than 1,000 views. Now, flip this. In order to be able to monetize certain things on YouTube, you have to have 10,000 watch time hours and have 1,000 subscribers, which will mean 88% of all the content creators that are on there cannot monetize. So how do you then protect that? You give the creators, through legislation, more protection so that unilateral parameters such as those do not exist, or at least are outlawed. Or they can say, no, in order for the content to live on these platforms, we want X and Y to change because this is what we want for the platforms to interact with our content. Because these platforms have all the power currently because they own the internet. So you need to protect creatives who are playing in the internet by giving them legislative authority and legislative power. And these laws fell short. These bills fell short in giving us that protection. And Lord help us that the president saw and heard our cries and returned them. But now the work starts. It is now that we as an industry now need to band together and lobby for the right type of bill to pass. Because we were silent for too long and we almost had the industry being sold right up from under our noses. Now it's time for us to lobby correctly for the correct bills. Because it's not to say what the preambles of the bills want, which is they want to future-proof the industry or the bills. And by the way, the only way to future-proof the bills is to give the creators more power, because then they'll be able to interact with any new technology that comes up. So also exceptions for the visually impaired. Those are things that everybody supports. And also the industry is calling this. It's long overdue that the bills are amended because we need modern, up-to-date laws. The current laws are out of date because they are too old. So there's no pro-copyright proponent in this country who doesn't see the need for the bill to be urgently amended and urgently passed into law in the right format. But we can't do for the sake of doing.
Yeah.
These are laws. Unfortunately, laws aren't like I don't know, like they aren't practiced. Like it's not like Dalama Kendo outside. It's a law, and it's going to affect the livelihood of people. And we, as an industry that lives in accordance with the black and white of those laws, have to guard it jealously. Because should we pass a non-workable law, we are the ones who are going to suffer because we're going to spend the next 10 years in court trying to fix an incorrect legislation. During that time, how many are unable to make use of their wealth, or how many will be exploited, or how many will find themselves on the opposite end of terrible deals, just because we were rushing to put through a bill for the sake of rushing. I mean, we've sat with this bill since 1978. So it's time to make, if we are going to change it, let's change it correctly. You can't say, you can't just say, pass it, we'll deal with the ills later. No, that's a problem. You can't do things that affect livelihood like that. And it's indicative of the way in which I think as a creative industry, we've been treated for a while, which is, man, these ones are fine with whatever. No, we want the right thing now. It's time we demand excellence. In the way in which we are treated in the delivery, in everything that has to do with our arts and culture, we need to be jealously protective of it and make sure we guard it with everything we have. And it starts with making sure that the bills do exactly what we want them to do. So we need to, like, when it's time to go back into parliament, let's all stand up, all platforms like these, and everybody must stand up and go in there and shout and say we want a bill that works for us.
Yeah, and Bra Wiseman, I think another thing is that musicians, we've gotten ourselves into this naturally as artists. We just want to create, and people want to create all the time, but we also neglect some of the important things. Can you just imagine a whole bill being passed without you even being aware as an artist, and it affects you in such a big way, and I think we need to start having a bit more, not even a bit, we need to have more interest, with regards to our careers
it's
and
crucial.
everything that
It's
involves our
crucial,
music.
man.
Yeah.
It's crucial. And by far, I think the last study was saying, I think about 65% of all businesses in the creative industry are informal. Which means it's you and me coming up with a business because, and it also said that most of the people or the entrepreneurs within the business are people who would come in after having been rejected by the formal market, in quotes, right? So, and we'll sit there in parliament and people will be debating about the 35% of the big businesses within the creative industry. Forgetting that the majority of the people in the creative industry and the majority of the businesses in the creative industry are informal businesses housed by one or two people who are providing food on the table for 5 family members. And that's the reality of the industry. It's not the 2 or 3 big companies that you will see. In fact, there's way less big companies because it's 65% or 60 something or informal. The formal one doesn't mean it's not it's big business. I mean, from a record label perspective, there are only 3 majors, only 3. Only 3 majors. And how many record labels exist in this country? Over 6,000. And there's only 3 majors. And then when you talk about the business of music and the effects of that music, it's always through the prisms of saying, no, we need to curtail the power of these 3 majors. But what about all the other 5,997 record labels that are investing, that are independent record labels, that are entrepreneurs within the economy of this country, that are investing in the creation of recordings? Those are the people we should be looking at and saying, does the law protect those guys? The 90% of the industry. And then when you think about songwriters, you must also be like, you'll find, okay, yesterday, no, these are you're looking at just the 3 majors. What about the majority that are bootstrap songwriters or publishing entities that are just 2 or 3 people trying to work their catalog? They're not doing much. They're trying to work their catalog and they're trying to make sure that their catalog derives the best possible value. Those are the people you should be legislating for, saying, how do we give these people more power? One, make sure they enterprise to a point where they can compete with the majors. Get to a point where, if look at what is it that allowed the majors to amass that kind of, okay, and then say, okay, how do I make sure I give that to our local entities
and the majority,
to the wider? So by the time you look back 10 years from now, you have no majors, but rather a sector of maybe 20 really powerful music companies. And then others, where you can also charter a very clear route of saying, how do we get, we move entities within the creative space from entrance to proper, what you call this, enterprise development. And people who can churn out really good quality sounds, because this is our culture in any case. So when we're creating music, there's an enjoyment element, but there's a very serious cultural aspect of it. And that culture we can export. It's criminal to think that South Africa is as great at dance as we are, but we haven't found a way to really export and monetize the export of our ability to dance. I mean, the way in which people are interacting with some of our dance, they're thinking it's coming from West or East Africa. Meanwhile, it's local dance. And like even house, right now, there are people interacting with Amapiano thinking it's coming from the West or the East. People didn't think Gwara Gwara was a South African dance for the longest of times. Because we haven't found ways to really monetize and export our creativity
Mm.
and our cultural assets. And the only way we can do that is through really strong bills that work for the creator.
Mm. Mm. And yeah, I do hope that as we go, as the times go, things will change for the better. It's really for me. It's funny that we are sitting with a bill that is like over 50 years old, and so much has changed within the industry. Like so much
You know,
changes
there
every
was no
day.
internet when it was made.
Yes, yes, yeah. And I want to just finish by asking you about um, how people can register and sign themselves up with CAPASSO, whether as publishers or as songwriters. The website, and also I wanted to ask you about the turnaround time for that as well. How soon does it happen that when I register that my account is fully set up, and then I can what then happens after that actually?
Okay, great. So this leads us to a very crucial part of these things that I always like to harp on about. So, firstly, membership is through the website. So it's www.capasso.co.za, which is www.capasso.co.za. So I'll repeat that: www. Charlie, Alpha, Peter, Alpha, Sugar, Sugar, Oscar.
Copy that.
Usually people want to double up on the P rather than the S.
Yeah.
It's a very common mistake. And then you can then complete either the publisher or the membership form or application form in there. That should, if you've completed the form correctly, within 24 hours, you should get an email confirming receipts. They just said, okay, we've received your application. So, and if all of that is done, the membership in essence is finalized. You'll get a copy of your membership in PDF form emailed to you. And once you get that PDF, it's confirmation that your PDF has gone through to the team, right? And that your application has. So whatever you get is the same record we'll have on our end. So if anything goes wrong, you can just send that record and say, this is what I got. As far as my application is concerned, is this fine? And then you then look at the more crucial aspect, which is what most people forget, which is the notification of works. Completing the membership application form is one thing. The membership notification of works part is the crucial part because that's the money part. That's where we then are able to then say, Isiho wrote or composed these songs. And in composing these songs, this is a share of those songs. So when those songs are then being used, or when an Apple Music reports the usage of whatever many songs, the 7 million songs that we were talking about earlier, 7 million lines worth of data being reported, would then be able to then search within those 7 million lines and see if the songs are on there. And that is done systematic. So that it becomes very crucial that the metadata for your songs is notified. You can become a member for 5 years. If you've never notified or notified it correctly, it is impossible for us to know what songs belong to you, and that means it's impossible for us to pay. So the crucial element, if you spend time on anything, let it be the notification of works form. And you'll see that the team will send you what's known as an SWI format for that notification of works. Take time to look at the examples and complete that in Excel format. Because also the reason for Excel is also this: it then allows us to ensures that the data integrity is as you put it, because we no longer have to input it the way we just take it as is, as you've submitted. Verify if the stress splits add up to 100. If it does and it's correct and everything else is fine, we can just upload it as is without having to. Because now you can imagine a mistake just typing I instead of O because they're too close on the keyboard changes those things. You can imagine how many songs have the title My Love.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can have thousands and thousands of songs titled My Love. So it's crucial that we get it as you've written it so that when it comes in as you've written it, when you were doing it for your aggregator or your record label was doing it for whichever distributor it was using, we can know and have it exactly the same way. And it's crucially also, we're calling that if you do have access to your ISRC, put your ISRC in our notification so we know. And in conversely, when we find the ISWC, we'll give you make it a habit to have a full database of your songs with the full information just at the click of a button. Keep that Excel spreadsheet as a reference for your own songs, and you keep adding songs to it. So that if at any given moment I ask, so how many songs have you actually written over your span? You can just say, I don't know, let me go into this folder. You go into that folder and you look at, and you're like, my spreadsheet says 250. That allows you to be easily to evaluate your time spent creating songs. And at a later stage, when it comes to monetizing your catalog, you'll be able to then say, I have 250 songs, and of these 250 songs, I know these 300 are the ones, these 50 are the ones that make the most money out of these. So in essence, here's my money maker. I make this much money. If anybody is looking to buy your catalog, you have statistics and legit numbers that justify whatever number you'll be asking for. It's just an easy way of that, and it's a way which we need to start getting, especially DIY musicians. We need to start getting into that habit, and it's easy if you are doing it as you are notified, because you keep adding to that spreadsheet. You're not doing anything else. You just adding to that spreadsheet. But in the long run, because now you'd be surprised at how many times you get somebody who's 20 years into the game. You're like, how many songs have you written? I don't know. Then how sure are you that you're earning from every possible composition you've ever made if you don't know how many songs? Because at every given moment, you need to be taking a temperature check to say, hi man, I know there's traction on this new song I wrote, but it's not in my statement. Then you just verify. Tim, there's this song that I wrote. I'm seeing income on the recorded side. I'm not seeing income on the publishing side. Can you check? And then you start working with the CMO in that sense to create a working system. Because all the CMOs are an extension of the business of the composer, but we data administrators. And with data, sometimes data falls by the cracks, whatever, but it makes it easier to then correct if you know exactly what you're looking for, and we can then go into that and change whatever needs to be changed and fix whatever needs to be fixed, and whatever oversight was there can quickly be remedied. But without that knowledge, you might go 20 years not earning from your biggest songs just because the money comes in. You're thinking, yeah, no, the money is fine. The money is coming in. And by the time you check, it's 20 years later. You're like, hi, man, I've been earning, yes, but I've been earning from everything else. Or you might see something silly like a split where you thought you owned 50% of the song, but maybe you notified incorrectly and you notified 25%, and you've been earning half of what you should have been earning from one song for 20 years because you never really bothered to just double check to see if it's going correctly.
Yeah. Just in closing, I want to know, do you guys find yourselves then having large amounts of money that are being uncollected? How does that work? Do you just keep it until the rightful owner notifies you, or you just
So
chow?
it works in three ways. Well, not really three ways, but it works in these two ways. So we keep the money for a while. In the sense that we try, and this is where we then, if you're part of the member elements, you'll probably receive notifications of what we call ONIs, where we say, here are songs we've identified. There's usage for these songs. We don't have the metadata to be able to pay. Please notify these songs if you have a share in these songs. That's the first part. So we keep it, and then we then say, okay, Lesego, here's 50,000 songs that we've identified that have the most money. Go through these 50,000 songs. Yours might be in there, they might not. We don't know. Because as crucially, and this is something that people must understand, we're getting data from all sorts. So we're going through, I think right now, we just went through, the cumulative number of lines we've gone through is about 700 million lines worth of data from different sources. So you can imagine how difficult. There's no way a naked eye can go through that. It has to be systems, and systems are only as good as the data that is put in there. So this is why we crucially ask for the data. And then the second part is that, unfortunately, after a while, claims prescribe. This is by law, not just by us. This is law, where any claim, whether it is a civil claim, even if I owe you a debt now, after 3 years, if you haven't collected your debt or made strides to try and collect your debt, that debt expires.
The banks will have another thing to say. Yeah.
Now, even with the bank, this is why the bank try to call you after a while
Oh, yeah,
and say
to say.
sign an acknowledgement of, because then what that does is interrupts the running of prescription. But prescription runs the moment that you know you are due a debt and you don't collect. The law says debt cannot be owed forever. So this is where we then say, crucially, then if you insistently aren't doing this thing, you'll find that the money goes back into the pot of those people who have identified and gets distributed equally to those people.
Yeah, ne?
So, and this, we generally try to do this after at least 4 years. The law says 3. We try to do it at least 4 or 5 years. To say, okay, we've given enough and ample time to everybody to try. And traditionally, we try to not do that much with the digital aspects of it, because people are still trying to acclimatize to the process of digitization and everything. But crucially, with digital, you now need to notify quicker, because the turnaround time for payment is quicker. We're running a digital distribution every quarter, which means there's a payment every quarter. So if you can release a song today, have it go viral tomorrow, and in 3 months' time,
You'll get something.
yeah.
You'll get something, yeah. And sometimes I used to think that royalty collection societies like yourself as CAPASSO and Sambro, I was like, these people, they must be colluding with the banks, because every time I'm broke, suddenly, like I get a check from Sambro, out of nowhere. I'm like, hey, how did they know? But like, yeah, that's one good thing I will really advise people to do, because when your music is playing, especially on radio, and your music is getting bought, nothing beats that feeling when you don't have money and
when
just
you earn, yeah.
and money just comes from
And that's the whole, a working system is having musicians earn from their craft.
Yeah.
And that is what we're working towards, having more and more musicians being able to earn from their craft. Because the more you earn from doing what you love and doing the craft of creating music, the more music we can get out of you. Every time you have to split your time between making music and going to work at a bank, we're losing the ability for you to create music 24/7.
True.
Which means ultimately society loses out.
Yeah.
If some of the most talented musicians didn't dedicate their time to create music, imagine if Brenda Fassie was stuck at a receptionist job
At a
or
call
at a bank
center.
somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, like we would have lost so much as a country.
True. No,
And imagine if Brahu was somewhere else and not a musician.
Serious. No, and that makes sense, because like we don't think about it when we're just thinking about I need to survive, I need to get a job and stuff like that. But this could be very profitable if you do it right, and you need to have the systems in place. It doesn't help that you produce a lot of songs, a lot of good songs. If the systems are not in place, you will not get the most out of it. Like you want to draw as much as you can out of every single composition, to really make sure that
even if it's R5, if it's your R5, it must come to you.
It must come to you, exactly. Otherwise, after 3 years, wise men and them are having an office party there with your mind and stuff.
No, actually, no. It goes back to your
the other,
counterpart.
the Beyonce, yeah.
Because remember, we work on a fixed admin.
Oh,
And that
yes.
doesn't change.
Yeah.
We work on a fixed admin that doesn't move. Because CAPASSO is an NPO, so the idea is that the business of the composers, authors, and publishers is what we are working for. So we are making that money doesn't even go, and this is why I always say, even when collecting, there's no money that sits within the collecting society.
Yeah.
There's a strict budget. There's anything that is royalties goes into a royalty pot, and cannot be touched.
Yeah, ne.
And it's so crucial that understanding is drummed into the minds, particularly of our people, so that they can know how to make use of the system for their benefit.
Yeah.
Participation in organizational structures, committees, coming to workshops, coming to AGMs is crucial, especially young people who are active, because that's where you'll find in some territories, you'll find people making rules that disadvantage active musicians because the active musicians aren't there to vote on these things because they're too busy or too cool.
Yeah. No, Brayak, now I've learned a lot. I think we can park it here. There's definitely a lot of information that you've shared, and I hope that
Sure
a
thing.
lot of people really, got a lot out of this conversation. So I want to thank you
Yeah,
for,
let's hope so.
taking your
Yeah,
time.
thanks for having me, Majid. Anytime, bro.
Hey Tada, after we stop our chat, I will ask you about how much money exactly sits in the pot. I'm just thinking, but well, let's not say the numbers now. Anyway, I just want to say to people who are watching, if you're watching this, thank you so much for watching it. Please tag somebody in the comment section who might learn from the conversation, and share the video too, so more people can see it, more people can learn from these things. And let's remember to stay creative. Peace.
Yeah, sure thing.